Wow, I'm on a stage that has a sign that says Fancy Boys on it. That is the official definition of irony. Those who know me, apparently many of you, thank you, Doug. Lao Tzu said this: truthful words are not beautiful, beautiful words are not truthful. Good words are not persuasive, persuasive words are not good. So to be clear, which is the title of Reverend James's talk when he told me that on Wednesday, which was its own minor miracle that he had his talk title already ready on Wednesday, I was just so inspired because I had had this story happen to me, which a bunch of you know my life has been lived pretty publicly lately. And I was Doug has his temple of baseball that he goes to. I have my temple of supermarket. I am so at peace, truly. I am so at peace shopping at Ralph's or Trader Joe's. It's like, food makes sense to me in a way that many things do, but few things touch me the way that does. And being in the market and the commerce of it is always great. So I'm walking in Trader Joe's the other day. And I turn the corner. I'm just shopping in if you think this is Fancy Boy, you should see my normal thing. I have sleeves today. It's a very happy bonus. And I turn the corner with my cart, and I just, catch eyes with this guy who's there at the corner. And he starts speaking to me in Spanish and asking questions. If I had one of my catering shirts on, he's like, "Oh, you work for that company." This whole thing is happening in Spanish. Now, much the way that Lao Tzu's words, which I read in English, of course, he did not write in English. I don't know the words in Chinese. Now, I speak Spanish, so when he spoke to me, I was immediately in conversation with this guy, and it was completely natural, although also bizarre, and I'm like sort of mentally looking around the room to see what was going on. It's like, how are people even responding to this? And I didn't really care, but if you look at me, I think the first thing you probably don't think is, oh yeah, he speaks Spanish. But to be clear, it wasn't whatever it was in his mind that made him think I did that. It didn't really matter. The fact is that he came up and we were communicating. And we were back and forth, and what he was really happy about was that the company whose shirt I was wearing, his kids worked. It was my production stuff for movie catering. And so he had kids that were in the business, and he was a guy who was just proud of what his kids were doing in the world and found someone he could share that with. Language was not a barrier. George Bernard Shaw said this, that the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. Lest we think it's in our beautiful and persuasive words. This story came to me yesterday actually, by a really beautiful, soulful sister friend of mine through Facebook, so some of you have already seen this. There was a monk who was a teacher who was asking his students the question of why people shout in an argument. And a lot of answers came up. It was like, anger expressed and passion and all of these things, and none of them quite satisfied the teacher. So what the teacher said was that we shout in arguments because when we are in anger, our hearts get further apart. And we shout to cover that distance. And the angrier we get and the louder we get, the further apart our hearts get. Because if I'm having a discussion with you, you're close to me, and if I'm even angry, without counting the mic, you can hear me. Volume does not make the point. Volume is not communication. So to be clear, it's not about the words or the language that we use. It's not about the volume that we use. The monks that were around during the Vietnam War that did self-immolation, people is like, oh, it's a protest. Well, if you're dropping bombs on my village, of course, I'm going to kind of protest the action. That's a little bit self-evident. Their reasoning behind it was not about protesting the war per se. It was that the noise of the bombs was so loud that this was the only way they could raise their voice to be heard. Which is what we really want in our communication. We just want to be heard. We want to close that gap. That gap that in silence doesn't even exist between us. So to be clear is not even about being understood. The man who spoke to me in Spanish was not even concerned about being understood. He spoke, and I understood. So to be clear, it's not about being understood. It is about understanding. You see, you do not begin where I end, that the space between us, which is an empty in our connection. You do not begin where I end. You begin where I am. And communication for me is always just 100% listening, including myself and our self-talk. If we listened to what we said to ourselves more often, we would be fascinated, probably, is the best way to sum all of that up. So knowing all of that, I want to give us our affirmation today. A little short, 3 easy words. I'm going to say it once, and then you'll say it with me twice, and just use it as a reminder to applaud yourself or to remind yourself. The affirmation is this: I am listening. Ready? I am listening. One more time. I am listening. So in this space of listening, close your eyes or keep them open, because we listen with all of our senses. Let's go into the space of treatment, this space of affirmative knowing. Knowing that I am, that the I am is listening. God is listening, God is speaking. And if I am listening, and you and I are one, then we are listening. And if God is speaking these words now, then God is being heard. This exchange, this communication of life upon itself, knowing that where I am, we are. Where you are, I am. Where we are, truth is. And so the truth I know in this moment is that God is good in all of us. And I don't care if it is the sky God, the God that loves all, the energy of all creation. It matters not what we call it. It matters only that we call it. And it matters only that we listen. And so I am listening and knowing that a perfect, vibrant health flows through its being in all of us. That an abundant, overflowing prosperity flows through its being in all of us. That creative expression, expressed freely, is its being expressed through all of us. That love in all its forms is expressed in and through all of us. And I release myself into the blanket of this truth, into the pillow of this truth, into the river of this truth. And let it be so in every beautiful way it knows to be so. And we all affirm this together by saying, and so it is. Namaste.